Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Midday Western U.S. Regional Forecast video brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, looking back over the last couple of weeks, there is no doubt here that the western part of the United States has been very dry, much drier than normal. You can see here in most locations between 0 and 10% of average on precipitation. Now, this is the start of the new water year. It begins in October, and we have been very dry throughout the end of October and the beginning of November, and this is missing out on some critical early season precipitation. And we need to see how long this is going to last and if there's any change in the near term. Because when we look here, this is a satellite image taken just yesterday, looking down across the western part of the United States. It's the things that are missing from this map that I'm most concerned about. So for example, look here in the Sierra Nevada mountains. We don't see any white showing up, which means we don't have snow cap on yet. And you can also see out here in the Intermountain West, the Great Basin, we don't have snow here as well. Where do we have snow? Well, it's up here in the northern part of the Cascade Mountains, where we have at least been getting some cold enough temperatures to get some snow, plus the moisture has been sneaking in through parts of British Columbia like this. But you can see the effects of the stagnant pattern. See this right here? That's one of those big valley fogs that's sitting there in the Columbia Basin, and believe it or not, there's one underneath this cloud cover here in the Willamette Valley as well. And that tells me what this pattern has been doing, and it's been practicing avoidance with the West Coast with precipitation. Well, no longer. Things are changing, especially in California, and this is a map showing you over the next 10 days from the European model where we're anticipating snow. Now, do not look at this map and go, oh, I'm going to get exactly this amount in these mountains. No. I am basically showing this to at least alert us to the fact that the pattern is changing such that the probability of getting some bigger snows in our mountains is increasing. All right, so let's take a look at it in a little bit more detail here. Over the next 10 days, I have the operational European model showing us differences from normal in terms of the accumulation of precipitation on the left and the total accumulation on the right. Starting in the northwest, it is not as though we're not going to get any precipitation. It is just that this time of year is typically very wet. So we may be picking up between 2 and 4 inch deficits here in terms of rainfall on the western side of the Cascade Mountain Range. So I'm talking about coastal Oregon and Washington and parts of Northern California. So that's a pretty sizable deficit for this time of year. But your eyes are probably drawn down to what's going on in the southern half of California. We are watching the pattern, as we've been discussing this week, fold like this, such that we have this ridge that breaks over the top of a developing cutoff and deep low. And as that low moves onshore, now this is getting much closer in the forecast. We're still quite a few days away from it, but it's getting closer. As it moves onshore, well, you can see the precipitation totals that we are anticipating. Some locations picking up between 3/4 of an inch and as high as 3 inches of rainfall. So this is going to be significant for the southern half of California, the LA Basin, and getting into the Mojave Desert, and certainly over here into parts of Arizona and the other Four Corners states. So let's try to figure out what this pattern is doing and how it is doing it. First, I want to show you why things are so dry in the Northwest. What I've reconstructed here is from over the last 70 years, what has been the monthly precipitation totals for the Northwest region for the month of November. Now you can see with that blue line, the trend is flat, but I wanted to identify what made some of these years so very wet. So we plucked those years out and we created this figure. You see, for the Pacific Northwest to be wet, we need to have a pattern that does this. Okay, we need to get that ridge not over in British Columbia and in eastern Alaska, but instead shove it right between Russia and Alaska in the Bering Sea. If that happens and we get a ridge that comes in over here into parts of the Hudson Bay and Greenland, we can develop a deeper trough along the west coast. This cranks up the wind speeds along the west coast of the United States, specifically in the northwest, and we just funnel in that moisture. And it helps if over the Baja we have a ridge. That helps push it right out of Hawaii, bringing in the moisture as well. We call that the Pineapple Express. We need this to bring the moisture back up, and this is what we've had. Look, it's almost the exact opposite. We've had troughing here. We have a trough here, and the jet stream has been slow and meandering like this for a while. And it's taken the aim out of the Pacific jet stream, forcing it up into Alaska and away from the Pacific Northwest. We've had these little cutoff lows that keep showing up, but they're just insignificant features given the total flow here in the West Coast being so blocked up. Now, if we also look at another feature, on those same wet years in November, we noticed that in general, they tended to have cooler water down here in the El Nino region and cooler water that stretched up like this along the west coast of North America, getting into the Gulf of Alaska. Now, I got to show you a little bit different configuration here, but one other thing to point out, we tended to be warmer here and cooler there, but I got to show you this map. What do we have? It's cool here and warm there. It is neither in the El Nino region and very warm in this area. So the coupling of our atmosphere and ocean are telling me that we've got to have a serious breakdown in the flow pattern of the Pacific jet stream and the ocean temperatures before we bring in serious moisture to the west coast of the United States. We at least have a cutoff low coming through in the near term, but this is not the configuration to get us to be wet, especially in the northwest. So let's talk about that cutoff. Let's go ahead and play this forward and pause it right here. We see that by Sunday, our system begins to start to take shape. So what am I talking about? Here comes the big ridge over the top, and we can see the cutoff low starting to sit and spin here in just off the Baja of California. There is some aid in this by this little tropical disturbance that's coming up in this area. But what I want to watch is now getting into Monday afternoon, Monday evening into Tuesday morning. Here's where the show really gets going. Now we see again another ridge push through the Gulf of Alaska, broke over the top into British Columbia, and that allowed for this upper level trough to really deepen. So what do I have you at here? This is next Thursday. And as you go from next Wednesday into next Thursday, that's when that trough finally really broadens out and brings us the best chance of precipitation. So we're still about 6 days away before this starts. But let's get in and kind of see where that goes here in a few moments. But I at least want to show you this. As I stretch us out here, getting out into the 27th, 28th, and 29th of the month. If there is something good to be seen here, it's that we are slowly starting to see the pattern maybe flatten out somewhat. And that would at least be a sign of, well, I guess we would call it less intense blocking. But we're so far out in this ensemble forecast here, I think we need to be patient to see if it actually develops, okay? So what I guess I want to do is I want to show you the timing on some of this precipitation. So take a look here. This is now Friday, early Friday morning. So we're watching a band of precipitation stretching right along our coast. Now again, this is attached to a much broader low that's sitting way up farther north out of our image. And I'm going to play that fast, but let me step you back. So we will be bringing precipitation, not very much, but some precipitation into Northern California, right along the coast, and then coastal Oregon and Washington. And that slides through, maybe bringing the chance for some precipitation as you get up into the higher elevations in eastern Washington and in the Blue Mountains here in eastern Oregon. But otherwise, the basin is relatively dry. Now, next push-it precip comes through on Saturday evening into Sunday, but I'm talking primarily this is northern and western Washington and British Columbia. Here is that tropical system I mentioned, and it's going to kind of team up with the upper level trough that's sitting here. Ready? So here we go. This is now getting into Monday. Here we are, Tuesday morning. So on Tuesday morning, our upper level low is now spinning. We do bring in a brief round of precipitation here, not much, but some precipitation coming in Tuesday morning that does spread across Oregon and Washington. Now here we get the show really going. You see, through Wednesday morning, as that first system moves to the northwest, our trough really begins to take shape here. And now it is spreading rainfall as it sits and spins all the way from Wednesday into next Friday is when it's really going to have its influence. So that is substantial and significant. Prepare for this. This will be the first precipitation for Southern California, some locations there since last May. So you know what kind of conditions to expect whenever you get your first big precipitation event of the year. So now you've got the timing. You've now seen the location. That's the main feature we're going to be watching here in the near term. So what are our temperatures doing? Let's start this off Friday morning. We're going to be looking here at temperature anomalies for our afternoon highs. We can still see we're on average across the western United States anywhere between 2 and about 10 degrees warmer than average. And as we play this one forward, let's just get on into Saturday morning. Still above average temperatures for much of the west. Getting into Sunday, that's going to be a warm day, I think, for a lot of us here in the western United States, where temperatures could be as much as 20 degrees above average. Then getting into Monday, same story. But here comes that cutoff system. Ready? Tuesday into Wednesday. There it is. See it? See the cool down? This is all cloud cover induced. precipitation. And that carries through on Thursday into Friday of next week. And so that's your temperature change coming through. Putting it in aggregate, let's just take a look here over the next 5 days from the GFS ensemble on the left, European on the right. They are very much in agreement with the warm-up happening in the western United States as this next system loads up and we see this breaking of it. Remember, the warm-up happens big time here as the breaking wave comes into the northwest first. This is now looking at days 6 through 10. At this particular time, remember, that's when the cutoff low is starting to show up down here. And this will be the change in Southern California first. And this is now looking out to days 11 through 15. Why the differences in the models? Well, we are seeing a much different pattern in the strength of the trough here, with the GFS over here on the left being much deeper and extending further back to the west than the European, which kind of slides it further to the south and west, but not nearly the same intensity. So some model differences as we get out here toward the end of the month, looking at temperature patterns. So we got warmth now, but with that cutoff low coming through, we're going to go back over to maybe a cooler pattern or at least near average. To finish this video up, I want to talk to you about a couple of big picture things. We have been talking about this week in a lot of our videos about how we're expecting over the next 10 days for the polar vortex to really align itself more in a configuration like this. And these higher than average heights that you see right in through this area, they are lining up right over the top of the low sea ice concentration in the Chukchi Sea. And the warm North Pacific plus the low sea ice concentration in the Chukchi Sea is allowing for the reorientation of the polar vortex. Well, that and the rebuilding of high pressure over Siberia to take a lot of our cold air into basically Russia, stretching actually back into the Middle East. Now, as we see that pattern setting up, the question is it blocked up in that configuration, and is it going to stay there for a while? And how much longer are we going to have to endure these below average precipitation amounts in the northwest? That's something we started off the video with. I'm going to at least tell you one piece of information that's critical. Over here on the left, I'm going to draw an arrow. I'm pointing to the Bering Sea. The Chukchi Sea is right in through here. Now, can you see this line right in through there? That line in this color. That tells us where we should, on average, have our ice extent so far this year. And we still have a big chunk of the Chukchi Sea here that is uncovered by ice. Now, this is going to be filling in rapidly over the next couple of weeks. But I can't ignore the fact that still in the North Pacific, I've got very warm water. And we're going to see the influence of this sensibly heating the lower and upper atmosphere here with the lack of ice over this big chunk of sea, plus the warm North Pacific for a while. So I've got to see these things change before I think we can ever get our jet stream to come screaming out of the west like we would want it to this time of year. So let's watch it together, see how these things evolve, and I'll keep you updated starting off with another round of videos next week. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.